Hello, comrades and cadres. This is the Engelsist here, and I'm here with Red Fenian Punk. Say hi, Niall.
Greetings. Saoirse Goiva Carja agus a comrade. I haven't been on for a while because of mainly health reasons and life, so I'm back.
Oh, a while's a bit of a understatement, but yeah, it's great to see you back, and hopefully, I can find a way to get this video to you to upload. But
sweet, that'd be great.
So we've decided to come back to the current state of YouTube with some current events because, well, a fucking lot's happened, hasn't it? An entire general strike. The first entire nursing strike in history.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But you know what?
I was wanting to talk about it, and my channel was just like, and everything was going to shit. I thought I need to talk about this, but no editors, no this, no blah blah blah, and it just anyway. Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to complain. Things have been going better for us in terms of like actual like achievements. Like,
sure.
Just 2 years ago, we weren't going to see this level of like union activity.
That is true, and it's been quite heartening. Even
Unison have been active, and they're shit.
Yeah, the toothless union actually getting some milk teeth coming through. Like, yeah, it's bizarre. You know.
But yeah, solidarity to everybody who's currently been doing that, and I hope absolute success to you. Even if sometimes I've got to get an Uber and a curse, like I never mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, helps your health.
Union activity is to be supported, even if union's power is finite and it's limited. So it all helps.
It all helps.
Yeah.
So first one we're going to Biden to host Irish PM firm peace accords. White House says. Just the fucking pure arrogance of a Yank hosting the peace negotiations or talks of two entire other nations.
Yeah.
It's like Putin coming in and like going to a Native American, negotiation between that and fucking America.
I mean, if Putin did that, they'd be
there'd be absolute fury. Like it'd be an international incident. Yet when Biden, this is the thing that pisses me off about Biden. Biden gets away with shit that Trump would have never gotten away with. Nobody talked about it.
It's because he doesn't use the brash, bombastic language that makes people go, "Ew, that's not nice," and it isn't. Let's be fair. Let's not mock sensitivities. But he panders to the sensitivities and says the same shit.
He has talked and celebrated the fact that he sexually harasses women. He's a piece of shit. Like this isn't
the amount of shit he's come out with. I forget a lot of it, but yeah, I have a vague memory.
We forget that when he was talking about everybody made memes about him growing by the pussy, but it was him talking about sexually harassing women. At the end of the day, and I think one of my favorite. It's just it helped that he got shit constantly. It helped that
Trump, sure, yeah.
It helped me feel like there was some sort of repercussions for people's actions. There wasn't, of course. There was no in actual fact there was no repercussion, but it felt better.
I do remember the grabbing pussy thing or something, which is just like fucking what?
And not even that. One of my favorite ones was when he tried to bribe the FBI director to stop investigating his finances. Which even fucking Nixon didn't do.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. He's the thing that makes Trump dangerous is he panders to common disgruntled anger of the American white working class. Although most of it is really the labor aristocracy who've fallen down a little bit in recession.
I mean, I'm not.
But also he makes the liberals look good because he's such an offensive, obnoxious, brash, charmless individual. And he panders to the lowest common denominators, and fascists like him. They can conflate him with, and then there was this myth going around that Putin and Russia had, Russiagate, that Putin had rigged the election. They may have interfered, maybe a little bit, but nothing like as much as
do.
Yeah, that goes on with geopolitics, but it was not some big conspiracy in league with WikiLeaks. That was another one. These fucking celebrities. It was like, what was it? De Niro, Stephen King, Rosie Perez, and Rob Wright are all on this video saying they colluded with WikiLeaks. That is collusion. That is collusion. I thought you are lecturing the Russians on collusion, you bunch of Yankee bastards. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like,
and that isn't to take away from Russia's own like crime. They have gone to full on invasion,
Absolutely.
And that's unforgivable. But
it is indeed.
But at the end of the day, not sitting down and having diplomacy with Russia 10 years ago in like 2013, 2014 is what started this bullshit.
Exactly. I mean, what the Democrats in particular, they sort of soft. That's what makes them in some ways more insidious than the right.
They're insufferable. They're more
Oh,
insufferable.
they are. But I mean, Biden he's just Trump light. He's more insidious than Trump.
Tucker Carlson is easy. I find Tucker Carlson easy to watch. Biden is David Cameron. David Cameron's more competent than Biden. He's not. What I'm saying is David Cameron's brains weren't leaking out of his fucking ears.
Yeah, dementia. They reckon he has dementia. But I mean, there was John Kerry saying about the people of Ukraine rising against evils of tyranny. I thought, no, there were a bunch of Nazis that you bastards were cheering on and funding.
Not to mischaracterize all Ukrainians. There are.
No, I'm talking about this group that was involved in that coup.
Like fucking Azov and
there was a Nazi-led putsch with people. I mean, they were literally standing in the streets with their. They were literally standing out doing this.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't get us taken down. But they were literally doing
I really hope that doesn't. If it luckily, I have the advantage of censorship, so I can literally go.
But they were literally doing their arms outstretched in far-right Nazi salutes.
I'm happy that I'm able to edit this video. Let's just say that. But Biden.
Arms outstretched, right? The groups like Right Sector and Svoboda, Pravi Sector, as they call them in Ukrainian, and Svoboda, they're outright Nazi parties, glorifying Nazi collaboration, glorifying SS death squads in World War II. And they say, oh no, that's all Russian lies. No, it's not. It's not just Russia that said it. It's various other people. And there's video footage of them with swastikas and Volkswagen runes all over their bloody uniforms. When the Western media. I've seen it. My mate was watching it with me, a French channel, and they all had their patches removed. You can see where they'd velcroed them off. There was one video I saw of a guy sitting there. He was the narrator was sympathetically talking about him, and he was facing sort of like this, so you couldn't see his patch on his left side like that, and I could just see the corner of a black sun. But they tried to ignore it because he was sitting like that. And I said to me, mate, that's a black sun. That's a Nazi symbol, and that's what they do.
To cut back to what we were saying about Biden, I really think one of the things that shows the ego of America is the fact that they want to host the fucking St. Patrick's Day party that the Irish Prime Minister will be attending, which I really think shows the chauvinism of America.
Yeah, I mean, Varadkar is just a fucking comprador for Britain, USA and various other empires that want to plunder Ireland.
Anybody will stick their dick in it and use it as a tax haven, really.
Yeah. A tax haven or a nice little bit of farmland
just Switzerland with a worse climate, really. Like,
pretty much.
Turn it into that, like.
Yeah, we don't. Most of us don't even speak our own bloody language, even an everyday speech. Huh?
Like, of course not. And it's the same thing that, like, because it was erasure, and the truth is the people in power don't care to bring it back from erasure.
But most of the people in power in Ireland are descended from either the collaborators of the British Empire or the actual British imperialists. They just assimilated and made themselves look more Gaelic.
You know what I think is a damning indictment from both of us who are of Irish diaspora. A damning indictment.
Sorry, you were saying.
A damning indictment is the fact that Wales has done a better job of reviving its language than Ireland.
I've often said that.
Under English control.
Yeah,
that's
the comrade language is more spoken than Irish is in Ireland, and that makes me cringe.
That's fucking shocking. You've got a whole government to be able to, distribute and
independent sovereign nation.
Well. Yeah, but like they could at least do that shit. They're not economically independent by
No,
any means.
but they could do that. They could fucking do that, and they
You
don't.
could do the bare fucking minimum.
Nothing. Well, I mean, a good old friend, comrade of ours, Paul. Well, I won't mention his full name, but Marxism Today did a great video. Shout out to him, by the way.
Mr. Marxist
did a
Paul,
great video on Ireland. Sorry?
Mr. Marxist Paul, I love him.
That's the one. Marxism Today. He did a great video, which even I didn't know some of the stuff he was talking about. And he said, to this day, Dublin Castle, which is the seat of Irish government, the Irish Guards, the fucking Comprador police force of the Irish Free State. It's not a republic. Fuck that. It's the Free State. They're based in Dublin Castle. Dublin Castle, I believe, is still owned by British landlords, and the Irish taxpayer is paying rent money to these British landlords, and yet we call ourselves an independent country. It's fucking bullshit. And then when we go over from the diaspora, especially from the diaspora in England, we tell them this. What do we get? Fuck off. You're not Irish. You're English. You're plastic paddies. And if you notice, they've all got planter names. Not that having an English name or a Norman name is necessarily a bad thing, because I am not an ethno-nationalist.
Right, this isn't to mischaracterize people. Like, the truth is that all of the Celtic nations have been mixing and fucking each other since time immemorial.
Of course.
At the end of this, there's no. This isn't about purity or anything. This is like
ethno state is bullshit.
Like the way I had it explained to me, you know, Comrade Nat.
Vaguely, I'm not.
Yeah, he explained to me something which I think made a lot of sense. Ethnicity isn't about your race and it isn't about your skin color. It's about your family line. It's about your lineage. It's not.
Yeah.
It's about where you culturally connect to, and
sure.
It's not like we're not all a fucking mix. We're all of us are a mix. Like, The truth is that, like, you know, I've got like 2 generations of separation from living in Ireland, right?
Yeah, one for me. Yeah.
I've got 2 generations. This is counting both sides.
Yeah.
If I go over with an English woman and have a kid there, he'll be considered Irish.
Yeah.
Even though he's more disconnected from being Irish physically than me, but it's because he grew up around it. The truth is, whatever you consider home is the culture you claim.
Pretty much.
And I claim Irish culture, but at the end of the day, I grew up in Manchester and I'm Mancunian. Like, and both can be true.
And I grew up in an innocuous town in Staffordshire, and it's kind of like no one really knows about it if you move 100 miles away from it. So it didn't really have much of a roots thing. I mean, I'm probably more of an honourary Geordie, but I'm still an Irish Geordie. You know what I mean?
But the truth is, at the same time, both can be true.
Yes, very much so. But I mean, that's what I say. The Irish Free State compradors, particularly the Irish middle class, will always say, "Oh, but you're not Irish. You're not born here. You're not from." I say, my name is. I'm not going to give my full name here, but my name is an extremely Irish, Gaelic Irish name. Not that I'm an ethno-state nationalist type of thing, ethno-nationalist. But these ones are always descended from the ones who were always in league with the British Empire. They are either descended from the planters who disinherited the Irish Gaelic people from their land and create things like that, famine and stuff like that. And they're still in power. You know, some of them committed, like some commit class suicide, and that's good for them. They're friends and comrades. But these fuckers just became compradors who suddenly replaced the British Union flag with the Irish green and white and orange, and they're just the same thing all over again. I mean, Connolly said that if you just replace the British flag with a green flag,
all those nobles and land barons in France. All those nobles and land barons in France who the revolution happened, and then they did the exact same fucking thing they did before Robespierre came.
It also reinforces this idea. Sorry.
I want to do a study of Robespierre at some point.
He's one of,
it's the delay.
Yeah, but
Robespierre was very progressive.
He was demonized as this monster, wasn't he? So I don't know much about him. My knowledge of French history is crap.
I honestly think you could make a very similar analysis to the demonization of him and the demonization of Stalin, because it's very similar what happened to both of them. And it was. Well, it was probably very similar contemporaneously.
Yeah, well, the thing with like revolution's going wrong, that also just feeds this idea that liberals have and apathetic people have of saying, what's the point? It always goes wrong anyway. The government always wins. You might as well just not bother and just go and get stoned and watch soap operas or whatever. You know what I mean? It's so frustrating because it reinforces that idea of, well, see, told you getting involved in that doesn't do anything. All you need to do is just sit back and get stoned. You know, and yeah, hippies happen.
We'd still be in fucking feudalism at that rate, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it hasn't changed enough. Yeah, things haven't changed enough, and they're still changed. Yeah, like it hasn't changed enough.
We aren't where we were. We aren't where we were 300 years ago.
Exactly. Thank fuck.
You know, the next story is the UK wanting to stop the boats, which I mean, Christ, all that fucking asylum shit, and Richie Sunak's fucking absolute having no empathy for any people who come to this country, even though his parents are fucking migrants.
Yeah,
but
they're the this is the thing you get when you come from a colonized country and you're an immigrant descended, as you and I both are. We have because we're classed now as white people, we can just lick the boots and assimilate and become little.
We can fade in, like.
And he hasn't got the white privilege that we have because we're now classed as white, even though 200 years ago we weren't classed as white, but that's another story. But he's a brown person, but you often find that it's like once they find their little getting their foot into the proverbial door, they often become the most belligerent nationalists, and that's what's happened with that happens sometimes, you know. The petty bourgeoisie become the most militantly right wing because they need to prove that they're part of the system. You know what I mean? Hence fascism. And it's the same sort of thing with this.
Pretty Patel, that's a fucking name.
Oh, Jesus.
It's the delay, Niall. It's the delay. Because when you stop talking, just like stop talking for 5 seconds longer than you think you do for me to interject. Because we're stepping over each other. That's the thing. Like it's unintentional, but Pretty Patel just wanted to shoot him. And after she couldn't do that, she just said, "Oh, well, we'll ship him off to Rwanda. Like we'll strand him in Africa. That's the solution." And it's the same thing that happened to the Jews. And Gary Lineker was absolutely correct. If you can't ship him off, you kill him. But now we're doing the reverse. If you can't kill him, then we'll just ship him off to somebody else. Just expel all of them, banish all of the Jews out of
crypto-fascism.
That's exactly what we did.
Yes, it's kind of like it's fascism without the swastikas and the jackboots. But like fascism is not just Nazism. That's only one school of it, you know. And there's proto-fascism and crypto-fascism. This is how it starts. Economic crisis, racism. And then it gets extreme and violent.
It has become more fascistic just in general, as especially as what's it called? COVID went on, because they put in more draconian measures and more financial control. So it resembled more classical fascism because it's emerged, because it's sort of, I mean, all of the people in government who are completely unqualified to make PPE from private companies that their friends had, it's a merger of corporations and the government. And because at the end of the day, the free market capitalism didn't work in the 90s and the 2000s, so they're having to pivot to something else. Or at least they were having to do under Boris Johnson. Richie Sunak's a bit more of a libertarian sort of not that he's libertarian, but sort of more.
I'm not too sure about Rishi boy.
Like honestly, they're just putting him there because he probably won't cause another hissy fit like Liz Truss and fucking Boris Johnson did.
Yeah, I mean they can put him in there as token ethnic man as well. They can get away. They can say, "Look, we're not racist."
He's the first
they do that all the time.
He's the first Indian and Asian guy as prime minister.
Yeah. And the same trick is used without talking about going off on a tangent, but the same thing is used with justifying the Ukrainian thing. They've got like a Jewish guy who looks like a Hollywood actor, is the leader of the Ukrainian puppet regime, and then they make the Putin looks like a Hollywood villain. And also, he's Jewish. Zelensky's Jewish. So, there's no Nazis. It can't be. He's Jewish. It's the same, even though there's outright Nazis with swastikas and Volsinger and Black Suns and all that. It's the same thing with Sunak. He's Indian. He can't be a
also,
racist.
just because he's not a Nazi and his direct circle aren't Nazis doesn't mean that it doesn't go down to people who are Nazis. The government is a big fucking organization. You can have people giving orders to people, 20 people like out of the original orders. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say that it's only Nazis who are fighting for Ukraine. That's patently untrue. There's anarchists fighting. There's non-political people fighting. It's a war, but there was a large contingent of fascists, and also, especially before the full-scale war broken out, it was mostly the fascists.
I mean, the 8 years of bombarding of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Like since 2014, 2013, everything
that
like
was
that.
Mostly Nazis and far-right groups.
That's not to say, I support, there's an organization called Revdia. They're an anarchist Ukrainian organization.
I might have heard of them. I've heard of a few anarchist groups.
They were on a documentary. If you've not seen it, I'll send it you. It was a documentary on Popular Front.
Okay, I don't think I've seen it.
And they hate Russia. Like, they fucking despise Russia because of, like, one, the invasion, and two, because they're anarchists. It's not like...
Yeah.
Like, so... and I have a lot of respect for them. But at the end of the day, we can't fall into either side, because every war has two sides, and it's not about who's right, it's about who's left after everybody's been killed.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. It's like this is what happened in Yugoslavia in the 90s. I'm old enough to remember that. It was it was the same demonization of Serbs. They became like the Russians now. But there were left-wing Serbs and right-wing Serbs. They had Vojislav Šešelj, who was a fascist Chetnik. He was a kind of quasi-Chetnik type.
Wasn't there also Slobodan Milosevic?
Milosevic, now he was supposedly a communist, but then he called himself a socialist, but he was all the time plugging nationalism and allying himself with
killing a shit ton of Bosnians.
Yeah, and he was allying himself with Šešelj, who was a fascist anti-communist Chetnik, and Arkan, the gangster war criminal who was assassinated. What's his name? Željko Ražnatović. He was a Arkan. He was known as. He was a Chetnik. But on the other side, you had the Ustashi, neo-Ustashi Croatian side. It was the same thing. It's like that with Russia now. It's all these old nationalist factions coming out, Tsarists and people who worship that bastard Solzhenitsyn.
You would have thought we learned something about shades of grey.
Yeah.
In the fact that, like, the Yugoslav war happened, the Gulf Wars, the Congo Wars, the fucking
First World War.
Like anything, like what happened is that I'm not like we could have seen that Russia was going to aggress with the fact that they invaded Georgia when I was a child in 2008.
Forgotten about that, but I remember something
people
about
forget
that.
Like Russia has been aggressing in its borders, and I'm not saying all of it's unjustified, but the invasion of Georgia was.
I mean, to be fair, Georgia was another color revolution that was trying to.
I'm not.
But that doesn't make Russia right. That doesn't.
I'm not necessarily denying that, but it was like a show of force, and it was.
Of course, it means
they were completely ignoring the boundaries, and it was against.
It's the same. I mean, to go off on a slight tangent, I won't go for long, but in the 70s, when I was too young to remember, Cyprus had a fascist, again, USA-backed part in the south, ethnic, nationalist Greek thing. And they started persecuting Turks. So Turkey, a right-wing government, always notoriously right-wing state, used that as an excuse to invade northern Cyprus. And it's created this kind of like Northern Ireland scenario with like a border. It's more, Northern Ireland in the past than it is now, with a hard border and then ethno-states on either. And it was just, imperialism again. But that doesn't mean that Turkey was right to do that. But it doesn't. But to deny that the Greek side had a fascist, ethnic, nationalist, reactionary regime doesn't. It's the same with Georgia, basically. And Ukraine. It's a puppet state color revolution. But then Russia just uses an excuse to kind of go, right, we're going to go and make capital out of this and expand our empire.
Absolutely, like it's The idea was discussed. I've talked about it before. Realpolitik by
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger,
Uh-huh.
where we don't like in this one we've actually pretended to have a real side, to be on the side of YouTube.
Yeah.
Which things me because most of the time we just play both sides against the middle,
True.
and just extract as much profit as we can. I
Iran, Iraq
talked about
War.
this in the video that about the guy who killed Osama bin Laden, talking and unveiling some things about the Iraq and Afghanistan war,
Sure.
where he said, "Yeah, they made us just leave their tanks and guns in the country so that the military-industrial complex could earn money by making more guns and tanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though we
Yeah.
were losing resources, we had to do it because it was profitable." And
I mean,
this
yeah.
this is the thing, right? Because in Syria, the
Mhm.
America supported the Kurds, the Free Syrian Army, who are
Yeah.
fucking really bad.
Bin Laden affiliates mainly.
Various Turkish forces,
Yeah.
which Turkey, and a bunch of that. At the end of the day, we've had to save face in
Yeah.
this war because it's with a country that's almost as big, or it's almost as big as most of the Western powers, and it's a more direct war.
Yeah.
You you
Yeah.
think, and we did the same thing in Yugoslavia, but the truth is that if Russia even had any shred of a sympathetic argument now that they've invaded the whole country, I'm not saying
Yeah.
they didn't have an argument, or we had massive interests in Russia owning Donetsk and Lugansk.
Yeah.
You'd have both sides playing it against the middle, and the only reason that we don't currently is purely because of the political state that we're in and the Western powers' opposition to Russia.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
It's all really a game, basically.
it's like, I mean, oh god, I mean, First World War, even the Second World War. I mean,
Yeah,
the Henry
it's
Ford was
constant.
selling arms, I believe, selling munitions and tank chassis to both sides, or they're selling munitions and arms to both sides. First World War arms dealers and even Second World War were selling
Yeah,
to
and
both
there's
sides.
as soon as especially America's attitude towards Nazis post-war was recruit them,
Yeah,
because the Soviet,
NATO.
one of my favorite ones is the leader. He was a Czechoslovakian Nazi leader, and the Nazis in Czechoslovakia were some of the fucking worst. Like some of the
Yeah,
real
these
some of the real burn down the barn with the kids in it. Um,
yeah, these the
yeah,
Sudeten German ones you're talking about now.
yeah, it was a part of the anti-communist league, which also had Sung
Yeah,
Yun Moon, who was a Japanese cult leader. His
oh
quote,
him. Yeah,
his quote was that a real soldier and a real Nazi wouldn't shake when bayoneting a child out of a mother's womb. That's that's the sort of people that the US were totally willing to work with in
yeah,
order to stop the Soviets. And
yeah,
it doesn't, because the politics they claim, it can, they can read as much as they want, they can claim as much as they want about I don't know, Milton Friedman or George Washington or thing. We live in a different era, and
yes,
if they're able to exploit a Nazi getting to power and it doesn't really affect their home country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. We are we are all being they're all just making excuses. And the only reason they can't in this one is because of how high profile it is.
yeah. I mean,
They have to stick to one side. Boris Johnson, and it was found that his campaign was funded by Russian billionaires.
yeah. Again, that feeds into this. Russia interfering with, and we must support Ukraine because Russia's
Yeah,
supporting.
but it
It's
was
like,
Boris Johnson who was one of the ones who had the most corruption.
yeah,
Half of London is owned by Russia, was owned by Russian assets, and it's not like
yeah. I mean,
it,
the
it,
problem. Sorry, the problem is like Russian oligarchs They're only oligarchs when they're Russian, but yeah, let's call them oligarchs as opposed to British or American, US
Capitalists.
oligarchs.
Russian
They're all
capitalists.
they're capitalists. Yes, exactly. Big corporates, the grand bourgeoisie, the big bourgeoisie. They are. Um, they create this myth about things like, oh, Russia colluded with Assange to get Trump elected and all this. I think it's safe to say that the Russian Putins and the Russian government and Russian billionaires and capitalists didn't, because Hillary Clinton was hell bent on starting a war with Russia. They thought, well, Trump's not going to attack us, so let's support him. But it doesn't mean they interfered in the same way that this Russiagate conspiracy theory that liberals are coming out with.
Russia affects elections like every other country does by sending diplomats and presents and and the occasional hooker to a Republican Party convention. You know, normal stuff.
As does the US, as does the UK, as does France, Germany, and the rest of the EU. It's what bourgeois politics is all about. That's why you get these. That's why sex workers are used, and they blow the whistle, and they end up getting disappeared and stuff like that. You know, I mean, Jeffrey Archer had an affair with a prostitute called Monica Coughlin, who suddenly turned up dead a year later.
Speaking of women's issues and stuff like this, I'm going to pivot to the Polish activist found guilty in an abortion case, where I'll describe it quickly. Her name Justina. Justina. Whatever. I can't get a second name.
I can do it for you. It's Justyna Wojcicka.
Yeah, she was found guilty for helping give abortion pills to a woman who was getting abused by her husband. And she now has 8 months community service and has been charged for it. That woman is a hero and possibly saved the woman who was being abused life.
Yeah.
Because in a situation like that, having a child would not help the situation. If a woman is getting abused, she gets pregnant, she has the right to abort it without her spouse knowing, without anybody knowing, because of the danger it could present. Shame on any government that would betray women in this way and hurt women in this way. And I don't really have much to talk about this other than my utter condemnation of it, besides obviously the issues of Poland's government and Roe v. Wade should be mentioned, but I'm appalled, and I don't have any confliction or argumentation about it. It shouldn't be a complex issue, and yet it has been made one because of the right-wing turn of Poland.
Yes, very true. It's weird. I've been around Poles, lived with a lot of them, so I can pronounce Polish names like that. They've got the similar hang-ups to the Irish, similar history, because Rosa Luxemburg talks about it the way that Germany in old imperial Germany days colonized much of Western Poland and had given Poland this kind of self-loathing Slav syndrome. Ukraine has the same thing. Croatia has the same thing because there was a lot of Austro-Hungarian imperialism and collaboration. They give them this kind of self-loathing, which Ireland has had the same. We think our own language is irrelevant and we become West Brits. This is what happened in Poland as well. And because of that, they've got this kind of clinging to Catholicism. This is more like right-wing Polish nationalists. They'll cling to Catholicism. They hate the Germans, but it's more out of envy rather than the fact that the Nazis came in and butchered and slaughtered their way across that. And they try and conflate the Soviet Union with the same thing. And the Soviet Union made plenty of mistakes, including in Poland, but it was not comparable to the Nazi invasion. It's not at all even the same thing.
I think
this kind of Catholic, sorry to talk over you, this kind of extreme Catholicism is wrapped up in that. And this rightward shift, you see what I mean? And it's like that in Ireland too. You get this kind of West Brittery, but they still cling to Catholicism and Jesuitism, and it colours everything they do, and it's the same back home. You know,
I will genuinely say that I do think that as Marxists, especially in my ML days, we have overstated like how the fact that there were no issues with Poland or the Soviet Union's
No.
treatment towards Poland or Ukraine. The, it, there are massive issues, and the truth is that the Soviet Union was a draconian form of alliance compared to like what we should be striving for today. In this, not in the in the sense that that it was Russo-centric. It was
Certainly,
the
like,
power was mostly based in Russia. That's not to say that the economy wasn't more equal,
yeah,
but the political system of the Soviet Union devolved massively over time
yeah.
and
I mean,
became this. How do I say? Rammstein actually took, because they grew up in East Germany, right?
yes, they did. That's true.
They talk about like how just you know you had to go through everyone. You know there was so much
Yeah,
like
bureaucracy, really
there
bad.
was so much bureaucracy and so much like political bullshit, and everybody had somebody they had to see to and stuff like that.
It's
And
bloody.
this isn't to say that the economy wasn't better, but we have to realize that the Soviet Union became drastically worse as it went
It
on.
was. I think it. Yeah, from what I'm not an expert on it, but I believe it got more Russo-centric after
Is
the 50s when the revisionists came into being, and that became much more.
yeah,
It ebbed away and went towards like
and
market socialism, and then eventually proto-capitalism.
this also isn't to say that like because Khrushchevism was when the actual like positive things of the Soviet Union started to die off. Not that because it's I also think it's a mischaracterization to say that all of the positive policies ended when Stalin died or
Yeah,
when
it's very
because a
well.
lot because at the end of the day politics takes a long time to shift, and the most prosperous era was probably the early 60s in
Probably. I mean,
in the
it's like it's
with
very
like
difficult. Sorry.
with like Yuri Gagarin and like
Hmm?
the negotiate like it was, and that is because of the policies that came before, but
Yeah,
it's still but Khrushchev was also the start of the bureaucratization,
was
the
very much.
forget the continuation and increasing of forgetting that the intelligentsia and the labor aristocrats were also a threat to revolution.
I
And it
mean,
really,
yeah, intelligentsia. I mean, that's a term they use to suggest that anybody that isn't a member of this kind of like academic elite is automatically an anti-intellectual.
I
That's very
mean,
reductionist as well. You know what I mean?
and the truth is that Mao was very correct in
Yeah.
laying it out, but I do think it's important to take a step back and analyze the fact that
Sure.
it's it's a difficult situation, and what I hate Khrushchev. I'm not a fan
Not
of
a
Khrushchev, but
definitely.
there is also benefits to the governance of it during the early to mid
Sure.
60s, and
Forward.
it's about the study of a political system rather than one man. I I
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
think Mao was correct in the long term
Yeah.
about it, but and then again, Mao had
It's
his
not
own
about
faults in.
to clarify what you're saying. It's to correlate what you're saying, rather. It's not about one man or one leader. It's not the cult of personality. That's a very bourgeois thing. It's
I
about
would say that I would actually say that Mao was like quite aware of what was going on till like the early 70s. However,
yeah.
the political system around him quickly devolved and also made him a part of the regression.
Maybe, yeah.
Like
Your knowledge of it is better than mine, so I can't say, but what I
it's
understand, that's true. Yeah.
Mao is a lot of give and take. He's one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite thingy, but there was a lot of give and take to the Cultural Revolution, and there was a
Sure.
lot of give and take to the economic policy. However, I
Probably.
do think that the way that they came from an agrarian
Yeah.
society to and the idea of equal development rather than the development of cities outwards is good and was more positive and forward thinking. But
Problem is, it's like not people forget that it's particularly in the Western bourgeois countries, idealism catches on, and it's like this is a glorious thing, and it's like yeah, things still go wrong. Leaders make mistakes, members of that movement make mistakes, and
I
all
think Stalin
happens.
I think Stalin's killed at least 1 million people
I have no
because
idea.
I
I couldn't say.
because this I'm not like say I'm saying because of not necessarily intentional actions, but just
Sure.
around because of the time, and that's not to say that people wouldn't have done worse. I think a lot of people would have done far worse than Stalin
Yeah, yeah,
or
for
Mao
sure.
or anything. But
I mean, things like the famine happened. There was a famine in the USSR. It hit Russia, Ukraine,
yeah,
Kazakhstan. It also
yeah,
hit nearby Turkey, which was never part of the USSR either. But that so you can't just go, oh, it's the commies that did it, because Turkey was
yeah,
a right wing state. But what happened? The famine was weaponized by Nazi collaborators and
yeah,
like petty bourgeois kulaks who collaborated with the invading Nazis. Created this myth and called it the Holodomor, as if it was a deliberate Holodomor,
yeah.
meaning a genocidal act. It was not that.
However,
It's not what it was,
yeah,
and
and
that's been weaponized
however,
by.
this isn't to say that Lysenkoism was the most like forward-thinking version of agriculture that ever happened.
Not too up on him on that.
Like Lysenko was one of the leaders of agriculture, and
Yeah,
he basically disagreed with Darwinism on the idea of agriculture, and it led to
yeah.
complications.
The
Not to say
states,
Lysenko was all bad or anything, but the
the states
truth
get
is,
hooked.
it's a development in the 20th century, and I think we can do a lot better than we did then.
Yeah,
Even
the
if I
states get
think
weak.
it was mostly positive, which
I
I
mean,
do think the Soviet Union and
yeah.
the March China was mostly positive.
I mean,
Um,
even people in Poles I've known who were quite critical of it because they grew up in much more. Poland was much less successful. They even
yeah,
admitted that they still had free healthcare. They didn't have to move away to get a decent wage. They didn't have to, and the Catholic Church didn't rule the roost like it does now. And
yeah,
they all admitted that. They all had to say that.
but
Also,
but
the way this kind of like the way people fetishize the Soviet Union as this that was glorious. We must go back to the 1930s of the Soviet
no,
Union. We must ban abortion and ban
no,
gay
it'd be
rights.
awful.
It's like,
It'd be
what?
or like just go back to the economic thinking. Like
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we don't live in agrarian societies anymore.
yeah.
You know, and
This is where we get
there'd be
this.
massive differences. England doesn't produce shit. We
This is
don't
where we
produce
get.
any agriculture or anything. We'd have to completely
Yeah.
rework our economy and farming. But
This is where we get this on social issues like that. This is where we got. I think it's Socialism for All, another great channel. Shout out to
yeah,
them.
shout out.
They refer to it when he was ripping apart Morphin and people like that. These fucking pat socks, that
Yeah,
fucking tumor that is patriotic socialism slash MAGA communism. Don't they've been ranting about me all over Facebook. Apparently, I'm a degenerate, so fuck you bunch of bastards. Was it degenerate and soy boy and all this kind of stuff? That shows their reactionary and fascistic nature. But S4A described it as the horseshoeification. Now we all know horseshoe theory is bullshit. It's a liberal cop out that you go so far left you start to be like the rest. Crap. The thing is, they've actually made it real. They've actually successfully created this myth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Although what it really means is it's just that they're crypto fascists, because fascists and the Nazis and all of those right-wing groups pretended to have a left-wing mindset, and they steal bits of left-wing rhetoric, but they have a deeply reactionary agenda, and that's how these, you know what I mean? I mean, they use freedom and freedom of the individual and freedom to not get vaccinated and freedom to practice religion, and that's why
mm,
we have. The PIS, the Law and Justice Party in Poland, is a kind of semi-fascistic party, and this is what's causing this kind of
yeah.
women's rights abuses. You know what I mean? And have you noticed they're all men? They're all like right-wing, misogynistic
And
men talking about what
and
women should
this
do with
isn't to
their
say
bodies.
that there can't be like religious societies that coexist with like
Yeah,
women and stuff like that. You know what I think is a very good example of a social culture that's very religious yet very healthy.
go
This
on.
is in spite of its government, but Turkey. You can
Yeah,
there's a call
yeah,
to prayer, and yet you women are walking around in bikinis. You know,
yeah. It's a
it's.
case of if people want to pray, let them do it. If they don't want to do it, then they don't have to. I mean,
But
I understand. I
I
understand.
think there's also a thing of like, we shouldn't just completely sanitize and change things. Like, like in the sense that like, you know, uh, Trotsky went around and burnt the synagogues who were
Yeah,
that were in thing, and that was a
Not good.
fucking mistake. And
Yeah.
and it wasn't right to burn down any of the churches. I'm not saying. The truth is that
Yeah.
we shouldn't get rid of what's already there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understood the want to burn churches because I resented the Catholic rammed up me to do it.
Which is why I've actually pivoted away from being Catholic in terms of stuff like that.
I'm an atheist anyway, so
I am still Christian, but I'm mostly looking into like Orthodox and like Egyptian Christianity, stuff like that.
Well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any deities or any of that, but I do.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's aspects of the Christian teachings, the Muslim teachings, the Jewish teachings, as well as Hindu, Sikh, Zoroastrianism. They're all that they all preach tolerance and love for, and I think that's a good thing.
The truth is with religion, like the physical book is philosophy. Being in religion, you truthfully either believe in God or you don't. Like you either do or you don't, and it's something that you either inherently know or you inherently think, or that you inherently don't believe. It's like but to cut back to this,
yes,
the Polish government should be fucking condemned.
That's the thing.
This is vile. And
Russia's been getting clamped down on for, and rightly so, for things like homophobia, transphobia, and domestic abuse,
homophobia, all that.
Yeah, but why is Poland getting away with it? And Polish people are not in favour of this. The Polish government, because it's a fucking boot. They were going on about how they were victimised and forced into the Warsaw Pact, but they let NATO march in and lick their boots for them. It's self-loathing Slav syndrome mixed with Westernized Catholicism and this kind of right-wing. You always get it. It's the same with Ireland. They let the Americans come in and use Shannon Airport as a kind of go-between to go to the so-called Middle East, Western Asia. To draw analogies. Yeah.
And I think on this note, seeing as we've talked about quite a bit about this, I think I'd be willing to finish off the stream. We can. Thanks for joining me, and I'd love to join you some other time to stream again.
Definitely.
But this has been the Engelsist and Red Fenian Punk. Shoki and see you all soon.
See you all soon. Slán go fóill.
Slán go fóill.